ran out of storage. Anyway, so yeah, I think David Karsner was a bit scared of Lizzie Tabor, and I think that's part of what happens. But that's not based on, I don't know. That's just a hunch I have. In any case, the book comes out, the movie comes out. The movie premieres in Denver at the Denver Theater, which had once been called the Tabor Grand Opera House. They're really trying to dig into this nostalgia, and the history's right there. People from the movie go up to Leadville to try to get artifacts for the premiere and things like that, and so they're really trying to tie into this because this history is not that old. I mean, Tabor dies in 1899, so this is only 30 years after they bury him. Basically, it's still pretty fresh, and enough time has passed that his sins have kind of been softened in the public view, and Lizzie's sins have kind of been softened in the public view a bit. She's done her penitence, right? They thought she'd leave him once his money was gone, and here she is wearing a big heavy cross around her neck, and literally wearing a cross and walking through the streets with her feet wrapped in rags. There's again, Temple's a great read. I highly recommend. She has a really beautiful and pretty sharp take on all of that. Looking at the Lizzie Tabor story through a more feminist lens, and how culturally we sort of she's either punished for her beauty, or she's redeeming herself through. Yeah, anyway, Temple is a much more eloquent has a much more eloquent point on that than I do. So the movie premiere happens. Things are very popular. After that, a few years later, this radio play comes out. Now, I haven't actually gotten to see the movie. I found it recently on kind of a sketchy website, and I may risk it, but I haven't watched it yet. I also haven't read Karsner's book yet. I do have a copy of it, and I've had it for years, and I just never can quite get into it. It feels a bit salacious, which of course was the point, and I don't know. I have a hard time. I have a hard time kind of getting through it. But the radio play I did listen to recently, someone uploaded it to YouTube, and it's quite good. It's a well done radio play. There's a couple things in it that are really interesting as far as some historical and ahistorical things that they touch on. There's a bit where Tabor's walking through the opera house that is about to open, and he says, who's that on the wall? And they say, oh, that's William Shakespeare, sir. He says, what the hell did he ever do for Denver? Put me up instead. And it's a really funny moment. It's played for a laugh, and that is a story that got passed around quite a bit. It did not happen, obviously. It is not historically accurate. But it is historically relevant. That was a story that circulated while Tabor was alive, thanks to Eugene Field. Yes, the children's poet, Eugene Field. He wrote for the Denver Tribune, and I believe was editor of the Tribune for a while, and he had lots of opinions on Horace Tabor, and kind of poked at him whenever he could. Field is also responsible for the Opera House, a union grand of capital and labor. Long may the stately structure stand, a monument to Tabor. He was poking fun at him. So look at this wealthy man building himself a shrine here. Like, come on, you guys got to see through this, right? They didn't. The people of Denver loved him for the Opera House, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so the radio show kind of goes into a bit of that. It does change the names. So Horace Tabor becomes Yates Martin. His wife Augusta is Sarah Martin, and Lizzie becomes Lily. I don't actually know if that's true in the book and the film. I think it's true in the film, which makes me think it's probably also true in the book. I don't know if Karsner was trying not to get sued, or if the film studio was trying not to get sued, or what the deal is. But it doesn't shy away from being the Tabor story. The radio play is hosted by Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille. And he opens it up by talking about Horace Tabor and about the story that inspires this. And so, in fact, he says something to the effect of, it's 40 years ago this month that Horace Tabor was buried in Mount Calvary, and Calvary. The Catholic cemetery that is now the Denver Botanic Gardens. He got moved, probably, we think. Anyway, whole thing. So, but that was an interesting thing. This radio play acknowledging it's 40 years ago this month that Tabor was buried. And as someone who came along almost 100 years after Tabor died, it was interesting for just a moment to be a little bit closer temporally to things. It was also a nice reminder that, again, this was very close to when these real people existed and their story happened. And Lizzie is still alive, not by the time the radio play comes out, but certainly through the film premiere. So, but it's interesting. But the whole reason I'm talking about these anyway is that My Darling Clementine, I assume shows up in the score of the film. Again, I haven't seen it, but it definitely is the theme for the radio play. It's orchestrated all throughout. So My Darling Clementine is baked into the flavor of this radio program. And so I think Howard Pollock is onto something that's probably part of why Douglas Moore uses it, because by 1956, a lot of people that are going to be seeing this opera had seen that movie. Again, you're kind of tying into this Tabor legend. At some point, I really would like to discuss the opera as part of the chain of custody of the Tabor story. I think that'll be something that comes up down the line. But this was one of those things that it carried on. It also, the radio play also ends with Tabor's death. But before he dies, he is walking around the Tabor Grand to have a good look at all these beautiful things that he built once. And he has a bit of a spell. And that shows up in the opera too. So there's a lot of interesting ties between the two. Yeah, so that's I think part of why Clementine shows up, and I just wanted to elaborate a bit more on that. There are a couple of other... Sorry, I'm on my porch and something is trying to eat me. I don't know what it is. And there's a few other things I'd like to do. I'd like to talk in more depth about from episode 1, so I'll have a few more of these coming. But anyway, cheers.